Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Johnson, and I'm the Prevention and Policy Manager at AICAF. And I'm also a member of the Sistan-Wahkton Oyate.
And I'm Tina MacDonald. One second. Can you turn off your volume? Thank you for bearing with us. This is our first outdoor webinar, and we are, as you can see, staying socially distanced with our masks. I'm Tina MacDonald, AICAF's Communication Specialist and member of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, and welcome to Gardening for Cancer Prevention. Today we have Joy Persall with us. She's an Ojibwe Métis gardener who has more than 30 years of experience leading nonprofit, philanthropic, and community organizations.
Joy's leadership experience includes being the Associate Director of the Headwaters Foundation for Justice, Executive Director of Native Americans in Philanthropy, and the Co-Director of Dream of Wild Health. We're grateful to have to be here in her garden today and learn her tips for planting, harvesting, storing, and healthy Indigenous foods.
Before Western colonization and reservation systems, Native communities were a healthy and thriving population due to their active lifestyles and naturally healthy diet. Our ancestors sustained themselves by hunting, fishing, gathering, and growing gardens full of nutritious Indigenous foods that reflected the Native way of life, encompassing language, spirituality, medicines, respect for life, and the connectedness to earth and one another.
Restoring our traditional food system is an important piece in building healthy Native communities free from chronic diseases and preventable cancers. One way to reclaim this relationship is through food sovereignty, or allowing Native people control over the way food is produced, traded, and consumed. Many tribes across the nation already provide community gardens and other farms that give members access to healthy, culturally appropriate food.
As COVID-19 continues to impact families across Indian country, we know gathering in community gardens might be unsafe. Growing a garden at home gives you full access to healthy Indigenous foods and allows you to socially distance. Today, Joy will be demonstrating how to do this while Chris and I share a few things about why gardening is a great way to prevent cancer. Joy, do you want to start by sharing more about you and your background in gardening?
Hi everyone, it's great to see you today in my garden, socially distanced, and just wanted to share with you some of the fun things that I enjoy about gardening and hopefully encourage you to get involved with some gardening in your backyard. You'll be able to see some things today. I have a tomato in a pot, so you can do something simple. We also have a small garden to show you. My family has been involved in agriculture, farming, ranching, and sustainable lifeways for generations. And so when I go into the garden, it's a place for me to talk with my grandmothers and really honor the ancestors and the seeds that they have given to us. So I'm really happy to share that with you today.
Thank you, Joy. We're excited to learn from you. How do you recommend someone start their garden? What are some things they'll need to consider first?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I think you need sun, you need soil, you need seeds, and you need water. So we're just going to talk about it from a very simple place today of sun, seeds, soil, and water. You can see that as I was saying, we put some soil into a pot, and that's a real easy way to start. You make sure that you've got plenty of sunshine, the pot isn't under a tree, and you can get that. You can go to Dream Wild Health, your local farmers. You can find some good soil, some compost, and I'll show you more about that. I would like you to think also today about what is it you like to eat? What are the fruits and vegetables that you enjoy? And then you can plant one in your backyard.
Great, and what are some other supplies or tools we need to start other than the soil and something to put the garden in? What are some supplies we might need?
Simple supplies. I think, the biggest thing you need is your heart and your desire to go out and connect with the earth and just to have a relationship with yourself and with the earth around us, to remember where we came from. You have your hands. Most important things, your heart and your hands. You can use gloves if you wish. I get my hands really dirty. I don't have any fingernails at the end of the summer, but if you're allergic to plants, you can also use gloves if you want. I like to use them go up high on my arm to really protect my arms and keep my tattoos clean. I use a nice little rake, helps with some of the weeds and to till up your soil. And keep yourself a nice little snipper around so you can snip off some things, trim up your tomato plants, and keep things nice and tidy. I put some racks around my tomatoes. It helps to keep them high. If you want a fence around your garden, you can do that. Kind of helps keep out the dogs from getting in my garden, which is a good thing. I still get squirrels. Squirrels got my tomato already today. So those are just kind of some basic tools.
What plants are you growing in your garden right now, and how can you tell when they're ready to be harvested?
What plants are growing in my garden? Well,
Should we go to your garden?
We should go take a look. Yeah, I got you a bowl just to show you quickly. I got these tomatoes from the garden, cherry tomatoes. We've got some onions, some hot peppers. These are called lemon cucumbers. Well, we could open them up. It's just like a cucumber, just round, and some broccoli. So let's go take a look. I'm gonna start you on the end. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. These are strawberries. So you can see we've got some nice, these are ever bearing. We've got some nice strawberries. If I didn't have to wear a mask, I'd pop them in my mouth. I have lettuce. It's pretty much gone now, but it's in the shade of the house. So the lettuce will need more shade. I have a number of herbs, lemon balm, cilantro, tulsi, and some nice sunflowers up here for the bees. We want to always remember the pollinators and calling them into our garden. I have some tomatoes set in here. Some of you who are watching this will be like, why did she put those flowers there? They're shading the tomatoes. Well, I just want to say you always make mistakes in gardening. Really what you do is you just keep learning. Over all the years I've gardened, I know not to put my tomatoes in the shade of the flowers, but I did. So we'll see what happens this year. I do have a lot of nice tomatoes. I've got to get them harvested before the squirrels come and get them. Those are nice. So here's one where you, sorry to say, the squirrels, I'm feeding the squirrels today. Here we have a whole lot of hot peppers. I have 4 different kinds. We really enjoy hot peppers in our family. There's some banana peppers. Here you'll see a cherry tomato. Been doing a lot of harvesting of cherry tomatoes. Can you follow me through here?
Yep.
And here I have walking onions. I pulled some up for you. They don't get really big, but they're super pungent and they're really easy to grow. They're called walking onions because as the onion grows, it will get heavy with the babies, the seeds on top. You see how it falls down in? These will plant in this earth and grow more. You want to cover those up in the fall, they'll stay here year round. Over here, I've got some beets. Pulled a couple out for you to see. Here's another one. We can have these beets tonight. We've got some cantaloupe. And I'll tell you the story of the cantaloupe. This is my composter. I put all my compost in here and let it rot, and then I feed this soil. Well, in the compost, apparently were some cantaloupe seeds. So this spring I had what I thought were vines coming up, and I like to experiment. I just let the vines grow. Then I ended up with cantaloupe. So a nice surprise for me this fall is some cantaloupe. And here we have again these strawberries. They came back all by themselves. I didn't plant them here. So it's a nice healthy garden. More, I have broccoli. You can see the broccolini here. Some of it's getting away from us, but you can still eat this. We have broccoli every day now. You can see all the cherry tomatoes that are coming up through here. Looks wild. Hand them to our friends to eat. And then here you can see these are the lemon cucumbers growing. I had them growing up this trellis. And then as fall comes upon, these leaves will die and we'll keep collecting those up. And then I have a few flowers in the corner just for fun.
Joy, can you tell us more about how you know when your plants are ready to be harvested? Like, what's their life cycle?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, it's like people. It so much depends on the plant. I just picked this cherry tomato. And one thing about tomatoes, when they're ready, they just gracefully fall into your hand. So it's something really easy you can do with a touch. That's often why I don't wear gloves. I like to just touch the plant to be able to smell it and see when it's ready. When I was showing you the beets, you know, beets are a nice fist size when they're ready. So we'll pull them out. Cucumbers, I have to clip those off. They don't fall off as easy. The hot peppers, that's interesting, right? They come out as green. Sorry about that. You might know them as jalapenos are green, right? You'll eat them when they're green. If you leave them, they'll turn red. We can dry those. I grind up all those red hot peppers and save them as hot chili peppers to use throughout the winter. So everything has its different cycle. Find out what you like to eat and what its cycle is, and then we can support each other in learning how to grow the food you love.
Do different plants need different amounts of water?
Yeah, sure. Different plants have different needs. Some need more sun, some need more water. If you have it in a pot, you're going to need a lot more water. You're going to watch that really carefully. In the garden, if you've put down straw or some plastic, that will help keep your moisture in. You just need to watch your plants, and they start showing a little sadness, a little softness in the leaves, you're going to need some more water. There's tips you can learn, like tomatoes can get mildew easy. You don't want to water them at night. You want to water them when the sun can help dry that up so that things will stay fresher and cleaner. Some people have automatic watering, but I actually use my rain barrel a lot. I very seldom use the city water. I collect the rain off my roof. I use my water cans, and it's part of my really spiritual time where I water the plants. I check on them. I see what they're needing, and I learn from them what they need, and it helps me with my own life and paying attention to what I need.
How can you tell if the soil is healthy or it's ready to hold those seeds?
How can I tell if the soil is ready? You know, everyone's soil is different. You can go get it tested if you want to. That's probably a good thing to do if you don't know about your soil. You do want to make sure it doesn't have lead in it. So if you're in the city, get it tested, and maybe you want to do a raised bed. As you can see, I've done a partial raised bed in my garden where it's up higher, and we added additional soil. My son was taking a class on permaculture, which is where you really reinvest and continue to invest in the life cycle of your soil. And so he helped me put a lot of manures and compost on this soil. One way that you can easily check, though, is in the spring, dig down in your soil, not very far, and you should see worms. And that's exciting if you see worms. You've got a microbloom of just organic activity happening, and that'll really tell you a lot about how healthy your soil is.
Thank you, Joy. You have a lot of cancer-fighting foods in your garden. We know that fruits and vegetables are good for our bodies, but many of the foods found in our garden can actually help prevent cancer. For example, you have a lot of tomatoes, and tomatoes are a rich source of antioxidants and vitamin C, and have been shown to lower blood pressure and reduce bad cholesterol that can lead to prostate, stomach, and even lung cancer, which, as we know, disproportionately affects our Indigenous communities. So maybe your abundance of tomatoes isn't such a bad thing. AICAF recently partnered with Indigenous Wellness Initiative Well for Culture, and we published an article about 5 Indigenous foods that fight cancer. I'll link that article at the end of this presentation along with a list of other helpful resources. So for cancer risk reduction, the American Cancer Society recommends we consume at least 2.5 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. And Joy, it seems like your garden has helped you hit that target pretty easily. How do you think having a garden has benefited your health and your family's health?
Oh man, I have a lot of stories to share about the benefits of the health. I mean, I think like probably a lot of viewers, listeners, I too have experienced cancer and other health effects in my family. And it's been important to me since I was a child that I grew my own food. But I went away from that in moving to the city, and I think it's been a powerful thing to receive education and to understand life ways of other people. But when it comes right back down to it, I need to come back to my own grounding, my own roots. my own healthy foods is how I have managed grief, how I'm turning grief and into healing for myself and for my children. It's been impressed upon me the importance of the seeds that we keep. The seeds, I mean the seeds really from the plants, but I also mean the seeds that we keep within us about how we are as healthy people. And so the plants remind me every day about the sacredness of the earth, the sacredness of the water, the sacredness of each of these garden plants and our herbs, all the things that feed our bodies. I remember before my brother passed, he was showing me some apple trees that he had planted a few years earlier. And while it was a very difficult time, I felt so blessed to be able to take those apples and to prepare them for his family, that they would continue to be able to eat and enjoy some of that he had grown. And so I feel that same way about the plants that I grow and the seeds that I pass on, and that I want to encourage that in all our families. I was at a Dreamworld Health Market, and I was an elder came up. I was helping to sell some of the produce, and an elder walked by, and I was like, "Come get some tomatoes. You need to get some tomatoes." She stopped and she said, "I don't have to get tomatoes anymore." She said, "I got one last year, and I went to your seed saving, and I saved seed, and I grew my own tomato this year. So this year I have so many tomatoes, I share them." And that's the story that I want us to carry going forward, that we continue to share these seeds, these ideas. How do we do this? To recall the memories of our grandmothers, of our ancestors, so that we can grow healthy food, have healthy bodies, and reverse some of these social impacts in our environment and recover ourself, our mind, body health again.
So, gardens are, a lot of work, a lot of physical activity goes into that. But gardening is also a great way to stay active and reduce our risk for obesity, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. So the American Cancer Society recommends adults get at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity, such as gardening or yard work every week. Has maintaining your garden helped you stay active and meet these recommendations?
Yeah. I mean, I've had back issues. I have some respiratory issues. So every day I come out and I greet my garden. I walk this little garden. I walk this yard every day. While I've just shown you this piece of the garden, I also have raspberries behind this fence here. I have grapes over along this fence. I have herbs surrounding my patio. So every day I have lots of plants to talk to and to move around. The act of bending over and stretching and lifting and moving is all good for our body. And it's great if you can go work out, and it's great if you can work out in your own yard and in your own environment. It's hard to separate the eating from the activity, because I walk out here and pick tomatoes and eat them. I come out here and I pick raspberries and I eat them. And I bring my grandchildren out here and we pick the food and we eat it. So it's all becomes part of the lifestyle that we want to live.
Thank you, Joy. Once you've harvested all of your plants, how do you store them for the winter? So first, how do you store them for immediate use if you want to eat them like this week, or then how do you store them for long-term use?
Storing vegetables, that's why we can enjoy them for a long time, right? I mean, the thing about a kitchen garden is that it's going to feed you for this season. It's going to feed you for this meal. And sometimes you have extra, but I don't have a lot of extra. But when I do, I'd like to show you some of the things that I've done with it. You can dry things, you can freeze things, you can can things. My onions will overwinter. They'll do fine in a cool, dry space. Some will just continue to come back next year. The cantaloupe will be gone. So my big saving thing is my seeds. I keep my seeds so I can grow again next year. But I also have, and I can show you in a minute, I have grape juice that I've made from the grapes. We have a couple gallons of grape juice that we've frozen this year that we'll drink this winter. You can freeze your broccoli. You can freeze your tomatoes. I freeze a lot of extra tomatoes. One thing you can do in the winter then is, I've got a gallon of cherry tomatoes saved. I'm gonna push them in a pot and cook them up. You're gonna smell that heavenly summer fresh tomato smell. Then we're gonna make pizza sauce or pasta sauce or add it to some dish, or parse it out over a few dishes and really enjoy those flavors. The hot peppers we enjoy all winter long. Like I said, we dry most of them, grind them up and just use them in a lot of different foods. I also freeze some of them and then pop them in soups as I do all winter long. I also have herbs, thyme, tulsi, mint, chives. I dry those. I freeze some of them just to add to different things that I'm having throughout the winter, and really remember what this garden's going to bring when the next summer comes.
So as far as storing your plants for long-term use, what are there certain fruits and vegetables that are more conducive for freezing or dehydrating or canning?
You know, I really think it depends on what you enjoy doing and what equipment you have. Canning needs to be done right, and it needs to be done well so that you don't have botulism. The point of having that high temperature is to kill anything that would potentially harm you. So you need to follow your instructions and do that well and do that right. It's a great way to preserve food. In my little home, I have more freezer space. So I think that's an easy way to take what you've got out of the garden, rinse it off, dry it, throw it into a bag and keep it for the freezer for the winter. If you're doing peppers, you might want to remove those seeds and the top and just put in the pepper itself. Some people really like the heat, so then keep the seeds in it. Things like beets are not going to overwinter. I don't have a root cellar, so I'm going to eat those now. Those are great canned, but again, I'm getting about, a dozen beets out of my little garden here twice a year, so I'm just going to eat those. I think dehydrating is a great way for you to think about saving herbs, tomatoes, peppers. Almost everything can be dehydrated and then reconstituted later for another use.
Can you tell us which vegetables are best for those different things like freezing, dehydrating, or canning?
Which ones are best?
Yeah.
But there's going to be a lot. You're probably going to have your viewers weighing in like, no, I like it this way. No, I like it that way. I mean, I think corn is best frozen. Absolutely. You want to freeze corn. Tomatoes can be canned or frozen. So I think, you really have a lot of options. There's one thing I guess I want viewers to think, like, you don't have to get it right. There's so many ways that you can keep this food. Freeze it or can it, I would say, are your top two things. Freeze it or can it or dehydrate it. Those are your three really outstanding choices.
Thank you.
Do you have some of those examples out here?
I do have some.
Can we see them?
Yes.
Joy's garden is huge, by the way.
for a little city. Yeah, so here, these are tomatoes that I dehydrated from 2019. Little cherry tomatoes. Those are amazing to dehydrate. You just can't believe the flavors. These are raspberries from this summer. I've had about 3 gallons of those. And here's a bunch of tomatoes, as I was showing you. I just clean them, take the green off, pop them in the freezer, and then we'll be able to use these this winter. And then, I don't know, this is like nectar of the gods. This is our grape juice we harvest. We got about 3 gallons, I think, off this grapevine. It's our 3rd year with these grapes. And share them with the neighbors a little bit, but mostly the birds and the squirrels. Yeah, these are just some examples of things that I do in my freezer and you can do in a real simple kitchen backyard. You see over here I have mint. You can dry that or use it fresh. There's also thyme. So there's a number. I've got rhubarb back in the corner for you gardeners who can recognize some of the things. So I've tried to utilize different aspects of the yard with things that you can eat. And also wanted to have things that were great for when the grandchildren or the dogs come around, that nothing will harm them. That I've had a granddaughter who would go around taking every blossom off of every plant she could find. She eats it and it won't hurt her. I'm good with that. That's the beauty of it for me, is being able to share all of this with family and community and encourage them to grow and to eat. I tried, we talk about preserving. One big thing is keep those seeds. To eat a cucumber, take a couple seeds out. I had cucumber seed from about 8 years ago saved, and this year it was very hard to get seeds. My daughter was able to raise a cucumber plant. She's saving seeds for all of us now. My cucumber seeds did not make it. So it's so important that you keep a healthy stock of seeds, because if you're not going to be able to keep your food, you're going to be able to grow from seed again next year. And I know there's tons of people out there that would like to learn this, that would like to help each other. So that's the other thing, like feed your circle of support. Talk to each other about how you can grow the simplest thing. Even if it's just a tomato plant in your window in the house, I say that's excellent, because you're growing your own food. That's food sovereignty, and that's what we're about.
Thank you, Joy. Your passion for this work is very apparent by how beautiful your garden really is. And so, are there any difficult parts about maintaining all of this? If so, what can you do to kind of alleviate those?
Yeah, well, I think in today's society, probably the biggest, hardest thing is having time, right? So I make that part of my day. I come out with my coffee or my tea, and I greet my garden, and I see what's happening, and I watch it struggle, and I watch things fail, and I watch things come up that didn't go well last year. Weeds, a common thing, right? A weed to me is just a plant out of place. So I watch things grow and try and figure out what they are. But I also maintain giving each plant some spot to grow in. This year, I had about 20 cherry tomatoes volunteer. That means they came up all on their own. I didn't plant them, I didn't plant it. They came up on their own from seed in my garden. So I kept a couple, and I gave over a dozen away to people. So, while it seems like a pain that you have these weeds, they were extra tomatoes, I was able to give them away. I have a lot of purslane in my garden. People think it's a weed, but that's edible. It's just delicious in a salad. It also covers the ground, so I walk on it a lot. The other thing I would say is my issue here in the city are the squirrels. They and I have an interesting relationship. We chatter and argue across the fence with each other. And just this morning, they took a tomato. I showed you earlier, they're eating on some of the tomatoes. But I also believe that when we grow food, whether it's in our garden, in our backyard, or it's a large farm, we need to remember that the animals eat too. And I would encourage you to plant something for them. I have a tomato plant way in the back by my second compost bin. And I'm just gonna let that go and let the animals enjoy those tomatoes. Takes a little stress off of what I want to eat too.
Thank you. Are there any other resources you've used to learn more about gardening growing up? Or did you just learn from relatives, articles? Did you take community classes?
Yes, all that. I mean, I'm just real curious about plants, everything. I always have been. So I did get an associate's degree when I was young in horticulture. I listened to my grandmothers and my mother. I listened to my family. I had an opportunity to work and serve the community at Dream Wild Health. And I learned so much from them about seed saving, which is just core to the reason I do this work now. But I have books, I have magazines, and now that you have the internet, there are tons and tons of resources that you can find and share with each other.
Thanks, Joy. We've learned a lot from you today. For everyone watching, I've linked some great resources in the chat about healthy eating, gardening, and cancer prevention. If you want to take a look at those, or you can, if you didn't receive those, please let us know and we can send you an email. So prevention@acaf.org is where you'll go for that. Now we're going to be taking some questions from the audience.
I think I'll get us started off. I just have a question on my own.
Okay.
So I, grew up in a rural area, so I'm used to gardening and all of that. But, moving to the city, living in an apartment, how do you suggest, folks, are in that similar situation of, not having a full garden or, place to garden?
Yeah.
How do we deal with that? What are some suggestions that we can do?
How can you start? I mean, again, I'm going to say, what do you like to eat? When you say lettuce, it might not be iceberg. It might be a certain kind of lettuce, but you can grow that in your home, right in your house. And it needs some sun, but not as much as some things. So think about where in your home, or if you have a patio or an outdoor area where you can get sun and it's protected, that just start with one thing. If it's a tomato plant or a cucumber, just start with one thing. Keep it simple and see how that goes. Again, my daughter grew these cucumbers. She grew out 3 plants, only one survived. The cucumber had so many cucumbers. Her daughter, I have a picture of her daughter holding all these cucumbers, and they had to give them away from neighbors. So this is one cucumber in one small yard that fed the family and the neighbors. So I just want to say it's easy, it's doable. You can purchase things like, I don't mean to say an ad, but there's like a thing called Click and Grow. It automatically keeps the water in there. There's actually very little dirt or mess, and you can grow. It has lights, grow lights for your plants. So you can do that anywhere in the darkest basement or apartment. A little bit of investment in that way, but then you can grow vegetables at home. And honestly, that's how I started, with just a couple plants and just trying it. And it was so good for me physically and spiritually that it's just begun to blossom, and I can't wait to take this to a bigger scale.
I have a question here. How can you tell when a plant is safe to eat? So what if it's like deformed or it feels mushy?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think tomatoes are one of those plants that we are used to this uniform look in the store. But if you see the heirlooms, the old plants, the old tomatoes, they are some of the most, I say, beautiful, bulbous, we might say disfigured fruit, but they have such beautiful shapes and such beautiful colors that what you want to look at is for the firmness of it, not too soft, not mushy, not starting to go to seed, but a firmness about it. Some people will talk about smells even. Those are things that, again, I want to say, start with a plant and really get to know that plant, almost as if you would a relative, because it is your plant relative. So yeah, if it's odd looking, that's not a big deal. If you think it's rotten and it smells rotten, it is rotten. And then you compost it and it'll come back to the earth.
I've got a good question here from one of our participants. Do you make a garden plan each year? And would you recommend mapping out your garden plan?
I do make a garden plan this year. I'd show it to you, but unfortunately it's packed in a box because I'm moving. But in the winter, I spend a lot of time with seed catalogs in my notebook. And I sketch out the shape of the garden and where I think I want to try things. I look up, if I can't remember companion gardening, that means some things grow better with other things and some things don't grow well next to other things. I'll think about what I want to try to grow this year and what would be fun to experiment. How much room will it need in my garden? And then I order seeds and I order plants and I get ready for what will happen. Then you have to watch the weather. When is that last frost going to happen? And if you're going to be like me and go early, be ready to cover it up so the frost doesn't freeze it. But I plan, and I will take my planner back out at the end of the fall here. And I do all throughout the season. I make sort of a little plant journal about how things are doing, what I'd like to try to play with next year, what didn't do well, and if I can figure out why. So I just keep learning from it in that way.
Thank you. And another question here, how has COVID-19 affected your garden? So did you plant more because of COVID so you wouldn't have to go to the grocery store, or just kind of let it be?
Yeah, Good question. A couple of things impacted me. I ordered seed and it didn't get here in time. So for the seed I didn't have, and I have a lot of seed, there were some things that I didn't have, right? The cucumber I talked of. I ordered seed and I didn't get that seed until August. So I was limited on what I could grow for cucumbers, but there is Misty, another Indigenous seed keeper, gave me the lemon cucumbers. So I was able to at least have that much. My plan had been to can pickles, and I just did not have the produce to make that happen. So also I wanted to try a new tomato plant, this Amish paste, and they were delayed in being sent to me, and I hadn't grown out my own tomato plants. So I was limited in that because I also did not want to expose and go purchase plants. So I tried to stay away from overexposure and do what I could from seed and with what I have. I learned so much in this COVID environment about what I need to do to be prepared for next year so that I have the fruits and vegetables, the seeds that I need, and that I have enough to share with others. I also want to say, just in terms of the emotional impact of COVID, for me, the garden is a sanctuary. And so even in the times where we can't be around loved ones, that was a place where I have relationships, and it filled some of the places where I have sadness and loss that I can't see relatives or be with them. The garden fills a space for me in that. It gives me a place to kind of lay my heart and my prayers down when I have those feelings. It's also a place where others grew food, and while we couldn't share the food, we shared the photos in cyberspace and the joy over FaceTime that we were still growing things. Even in the Southwest where my sister lives, was able to grow okra like crazy this year, but nothing else in that incredible heat they had. And here I am with cherry tomatoes that are just coming off in immensity. So it's fun to see what different people are experiencing even in this time.
Thank you. Another question here. Any suggestions on how to keep unwanted insects off of my vegetables?
Unwanted insects. Well, you know, I really don't recommend chemicals. So I think a nice organic soap water spray tends to deter some of those little varmints from the plants. They don't like the taste of that. Or just hose it down. Sometimes that helps too. There's other things that you can look into. Depending on what plant you're talking about, there may be a companion that helps keep pests away. Marigolds are really good for keeping a lot of the pests away. So I have marigolds toward the one end of my garden, and so you can look into more things like that that are very natural about keeping pests away.
Can you tell us about, how you put your garden to bed for the winter?
Yeah, I'm about to do that, and I'm moving also, so it's kind of like putting to bed and saying goodbye. It's important to leave as many things in the garden space as you can, because a lot of the insects, the animals, they're living in there, and that's what's keeping your garden healthy. So, the bees are still out trying to eat whatever they can off of my grapes, off of my flowers, off of the sunflowers out there. So I'm actually leave the garden through the winter as much as possible. I will remove as much fruit as I can. The tomatoes often will ripen even in the house. So before that last frost, bring in your fruit. Clean up things that look weedy and dirty. You want to have it, not fostering mildew or anything like that. But leave as much as you can also for the animals that will need to survive throughout the winter. I remove the tools. I remove a lot of the trellises and things to try to keep them from rusting and being impacted, and have them last for as many years as I can. But this garden it's a year-round garden, right? Things will come back and things need it. And I will put a little straw or extra leaves on top of my strawberries and on top of my onions. When spring comes, I'll remove that and they'll green up right away. But really, I say good night and let it have its time.
Great. I'm just checking for any more questions here. Okay, I think that's it for questions. We can always answer more via email at prevention@acaf.org. Joy, did you want to talk about anything else while we have a little bit of time left that we may have missed?
I'm not sure. You know, I really want to reiterate, if you have not looked into seed keeping, I really encourage you to think about that. I'll just share, you know, if you have a tomato, a very simple process, fermenting that, let that tomato, what you would say, rot, right? Put it in a small jar or a glass with a little bit of water and let it begin to just disintegrate. For a few days, take those seeds out, make sure there's no substance around them, let them dry. Now next March, April, find you some good dirt and plant that seed. I'll tell you a funny story. I sent my daughter a handful of tomato seeds and I said, all you have to do is plant a seed in a cup. She put a glass jar on top, made a mini little greenhouse. She poured all the seeds in a cup. So we had like a tomato chia pet. So then I had to help her carefully guide her, right? She pulled all the little tomato plants out. She ended up with one out of 50 and had the most beautiful tomato plant. That plant came from the Narragansett farm in Rhode Island. She saved those seeds from that plant. I taught her to how to save those seeds, and I am now growing from that plant, and my daughter-in-law is growing from that plant. So I just want to encourage you to, if you even have vegetables now in your home, in your garden, think about saving those seeds, because you can plant your own food for next summer. Whether there's a pandemic, whether you're just having issues in your own family around health, to be able to easily go in your backyard and grab that apple, to grab that cucumber. For me, it reminds me of where I come from and the importance I don't have on this earth, that this earth is more important to me, and that I will continue to give back in that way. They're the seeds of the plants and the seeds of our good life that I hope you all will really think about. Investing in yourself and your body, paying attention to it. When you get that brilliant energy in your mind, what were you eating that created that good thought? Connect to the earth and to the soil and move to a place of healing and transformation for our communities. I just want to thank you so much, and I'm just grateful for all those who have taught me that I could share this, and I just want to thank you all for being here so that we could continue sharing the seeds of goodness we have each other and these good foods.
So final question from the day, it's kind of loaded.
Nice.
What's one thing you'd like us to take away from this webinar?
That growing your own food is easier than you think. And I would love to know that you had started growing one thing in 2021. You'll make a plan now and you'll grow one thing in 2021 that you can eat. Just get started and have fun.
All right, so it's, we're kind of approaching our time limit for today, and we want to thank you, Joy, one last time for your time, your knowledge, and your commitment to building stronger Native communities.
Yes, thank you so much, Joy. It was really nice to get out and get some fresh air.
Yeah.
The one drawback to masks is you can't see when we're smiling or laughing, but we definitely are. But before we close out, we've been getting a lot of questions about our new Indigenous pink t-shirts, and I'm happy to announce they're officially on sale. This is all just a marketing ploy.
That's right.
Please visit americanindiancancer.org/shop to order yours now. And I've also provided the link in the chat box. We do have quite a big supply, but I know last year we sold out pretty fast. So get them now while they're hot before Indigenous Pink Day on October 15th. If you have any more questions about this presentation or AICAF's Healthy Native Foods work, please email us at prevention@aicaf.org. All of our resources are available at aicaf.org/resources as well. We'll see you next time. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you.
time goes weirdly. I was like, wait, it's only 15